Back here in Vancouver at the International Metal Writers Conference with the chairman of Schiff Gold, Peter Schiff. Peter, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
So we're about 5 months into a Trump presidency here. Let's give a little bit of a report card here.
Well, I mean, I guess he's probably doing a lot better than the media gives him credit. But, you know, the reality is he inherited a very, very bad situation, and it's going to get a lot worse. You know, and I think there's too much false optimism out there on the part of people who voted for Trump. I mean, obviously, the people who didn't vote for him probably don't feel that way. But I think a lot of people actually believe that this is a game changer, that he's going to drain the swamp, that he's going to solve all the problems, and people are now optimistic. Unfortunately, none of this is true. I mean, nothing that Trump is likely to do is going to make any difference as far as the course that we're on. It's pretty much set. And of course, if you look at what Trump has done thus far, there are no significant spending cuts, even in his budget, where they do propose some cuts in discretionary spending. They don't cut anything in entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, of course, in the national defense. All three of those goes up, as does interest on the national debt. In fact, if you add the entitlements and interest on the debt, that already exceeds the tax revenue. So they're talking about making cuts in a small part of the budget, but of course Congress is going to whittle that down. Those cuts aren't even going to happen. So government's going to continue to grow. The Fed's going to keep printing money. We are continuing to head off the edge of an economic cliff.
Dow's setting highs, the NASDAQ, gold. Where's gold go here?
Well, the Dow's making new highs. I mean, it made new highs going into the 2008 financial crisis. It made plenty of new highs under President Obama. So the bubble, of course, when Donald Trump was a candidate, he said it was a big, fat, ugly bubble. Well, now that he owns the bubble, all of a sudden it's just a bull market. But it's the same bubble, only bigger, and I think it's going to bust. Meanwhile, gold, I think, is getting ready, again, for a move in the opposite direction. But you have the opposite of a bubble in gold. Certainly, if you look at the United States, Americans are buying less gold now than they've done, you know, since the bull market began in 1999, 2000. Sales from the U.S. Mint have collapsed. At Schiff Gold, I think we just had our weakest quarter since the company's been in existence. And it's not just my firm, it's industry-wide. Americans are not buying gold, even though gold prices year to date are up more than the S&P 500. But the people who typically buy gold in America voted for Trump. And they're no longer worried about the economy, so they're not buying gold, they're buying stocks instead. And I think they're making a big mistake. They should be selling their stocks and buying even more gold.
What makes a guy like you not sleep at night in this market?
Well, I'm not worried about the market. I mean, I know that it's the dollar ultimately that's going to collapse, and I know that most people are on the wrong side of that trade. I think what worries me is certainly some of my clients. I mean, we've had clients so far this year, even though our accounts are doing great year to date, we're way ahead of the U.S. market. In fact, we're ahead of the U.S. market since January of last year. But again, a lot of my clients voted for Trump, and they're feeling optimistic now, and I can see that in some of the redemptions we get out of our managed accounts and out of our brokerage accounts, where people are really throwing in the towel, even though they're winning the fight, and they're getting suckered into the mania of the U.S. stock market. And these are people who haven't bought U.S. stocks for 8 years. Because when Obama was president, they were too afraid to buy U.S. stocks. Of course, they were much cheaper then, but now they're confident to buy because Trump is president, but timing-wise, this is a disaster. People did the same thing after 8 years of Bill Clinton. You know, people bought stocks when George Bush was elected, and Bush was horrible for stock market. I mean, the stock market lost a lot of value when Bush was president. The same thing is probably going to happen while Trump is president.
What was the alternative, I guess? How would you see this country under a Clinton presidency? What would be different?
You're talking about now Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Look, it would pretty much be similar to the way it is now. I mean, it's not like anything substantive has changed. I think that Clinton would be a worse president, and I think that the policy agenda that she would have would be more destructive. But the real problem is that the policy mistakes of the past are already here, and we can't get rid of them. Look, we can't even get rid of Obamacare. We're stuck with it, even though Trump campaigned on getting rid of it, even though all the Republicans for the last several years, they kept voting to repeal it when Obama was president, and they knew he would veto it. But now that there's a Republican president that would supposedly sign off on the repeal, the Republicans don't want to repeal it. So nothing is changing. The government, again, continues to get bigger. The Fed continues to keep interest rates artificially low. They're getting ready to go back to zero. Forget about all the rate hikes. We're nearing the end of the cycle. They're going to go back to zero. We're going to get QE4, whatever they're going to call it. It's going to be bigger than QE1, 2, and 3. We're headed for another recession in the U.S. We're going to have $2 trillion a year budget deficits next time. Not just $1 trillion. We're going to hit $2 trillion.
That ought to spell good news for gold.
It is good news for gold. If people just understood how good the news is for gold. But I think once people start figuring out, the price of gold is going to start to rise in $50, $100 increments. So before that happens, you just want to take advantage of this lull in the storm, right? We're in the eye of an economic hurricane right now. People think that 2008 was the end of it. That was when we entered the storm. Now we're in the eye. We're coming to the rest of the storm shortly. So for now, it's just a good time to buy gold while there's so much complacency.
So if we're having this chat on New Year's Eve, we a lot higher here gold-wise?
Well, who knows? I mean, you're talking about, what is that, 6 months from now? I do think we'll be higher. How much higher, it's hard to say. I mean, right now, where are we, around 1260 on gold? I mean, I do think that if we can get through 1350, if we can do that before the fall, then we could, be, closer to 1500 by the end of the year. But we just got to get through this 1300, 1350. But at some point, gold's going to take off. And a lot of it depends on the dollar. The dollar index now has been weakening. We're near a 6-month low in the dollar. We start to see some more weakness in the dollar index. Ultimately, that's going to be very bullish for gold.
There you have it. Peter Schiff, Chairman of Schiff Gold. Thanks, Peter.
Sure thing.